Hello, I am Chase Roth, your host, and I am here today with the iFly Wilmington team. You guys go ahead and introduce yourselves to everybody.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chase, for having us. My name's Pat McGuire. I am an active duty Marine officer that, here that kind of an original concept for the iFly, dating back for about 3 years or so. And I'm an active duty, again, a Marine officer. Been specifically germane to this is I've been a military free fall jumper since 2013, and kind of that started the original journey of iFly in my instance, and using indoor wind tunnels for military training and skydiving, but certainly for enjoyment. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit later, but that's my brief background.
Yeah, Chase, thanks for having us. Dave Stoller, Chief Operating Officer for Fly Wilmington. Marine officer as well, currently a reservist, just came off of active duty in August of this year. Served down here as a spy officer, 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, then went to recruiting duty up in Maryland. Like I said, recently transitioned, and now with the company here.
And I'm George Jameson. My friends and family call me Jamie. I hope you will too. And again, thanks for having us. I am actually a veteran of the U.S. Air Force back in the Cold War. So I was it was back in the 80s when I was in the service, and had a couple of. I worked in a large R&D center in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee, which was an amazing place, full of wind tunnels, interestingly enough, and space chambers and ballistic ranges. And then I spent some time in the Pentagon before I got out of the Air Force. And since then, I've been a business executive, and I'm now a leadership and consultant, a business management and leadership consultant, and executive search consultant. And but probably the biggest accomplishment I've ever had is I had 3 amazing daughters. My wonderful wife and I had 3 amazing daughters, and 2 of them are married to these guys. So it's family business we're getting started on here.
Okay, I was gonna make a comment, kind of a snooty remark, that we've got 2 Marines sitting here, and somehow they found it acceptable to include an Air Force guy on their venture, but now. Well, like they took your daughters, so it kind of makes sense. They got to give back in some way, right?
Here's the thing. You can make fun of that, but, there's a guy at this table here who has enough sense to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I'm just saying, right?
Well, you say they're perfectly good, but are they?
Yeah.
I've been sitting around plenty of times waiting for the mechanics to count their wrenches because they couldn't find one somewhere.
Yeah.
So
it does happen.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Well, awesome. Thanks for being here today, guys. I'm really excited about this conversation. You have a lot of really cool things going on, and let's just get right into it. Yeah. So, Pat, you said during your intro that you're still active duty.
Yep.
And you got the inspiration to bring an indoor skydiving complex to Wilmington because of your time on active duty and all the time you spent doing military freefall jump operations. But why while you're still on active duty?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. I mentioned 2013, so I got the chance to go out to Arizona and do the Marine Corps' military multi-mission parachute course, what they call it, MMPC. From a personal standpoint, I was always a guy, and still am. I couldn't stand roller coasters, right? And my stomach goes through my throat when I still do it now. And but I've always wanted to try it, and professionally, and certainly, working I work in Marine Special Operations, and it's part of our skill set. So. First time I ever jumped out, a completely different thing than I expected, and I fell in love with it immediately. So it became a hobby. I wanted to be a little bit more while not doing it for the military, but certainly jumped a little bit in the civilian world just whenever I could, and certainly was appropriate, and I could get time, certainly, taking into consideration the family and deployment, so on and so forth. And really was jumping for work and jumping for pay, as you remember we called it, right? Just in staying proficient in that skill set. And then I would say fast forward about 2017, I really got into heavy, and that was for work as well. So I had the opportunity to be a part of an advanced freefall cadre, training and evaluating and implementing additional skill sets for operations. And I was jumping a ton.
That sounds like kind of like a dream job, doesn't it? For a lot of people,
yeah.
Right? You get paid to just parachute every day.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that, but certainly.
How'd you weasel that one out? Because I'm sure you weren't the only one that would have liked to have done that.
No, certainly. So in the Marine Corps, Special operations or not, if you're a jumper, if you're a static line jumper, so parachuting, the plane pulls the parachute out for you as you're jumping out of the plane, or if everybody commonly sees, skydiving, you're jumping out and you're pulling your own chute. But you get paid for that. Extra special skills in the Marine Corps, diving, jumping, if you use a lot of demolitions, because if it's a hazardous duty, incentive pay is what they call it, so HDIP. So they give you a couple $100 a month extra as long as you stay proficient and you're doing what your training requires to. So again, just doing that cadre where I was doing a lot of jumping over a lot of months. I was doing a lot of deployments, and in between those deployments, doing a lot of jumping. It was about 2018, Jamie. I think it was the springtime of 2018. I was in between one of those deployments out in Arizona, in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I kind of tell this anecdote when we're doing our investment. Either pitches, banks, investor pitches. But I remember it. I was always using iFlies. We use indoor wind tunnel skydiving facilities because it's a safe, reliable way to practice and advance your individual skill set and team skill set. So maneuvering yourself in the air in a safe manner. So when you do it for real, when it's truly life and death, it's what you're doing, and you've been trained.
You've got some practice already.
Exactly.
You're not practicing with the ground actually coming at you
exactly.
at 120 miles an hour or whatever
exactly,
it is, right?
Exactly what it is, yeah. So I found myself in iFlies all the time, in between jumping and full weeks of just doing indoor wind tunnel training to advance my individual skill set and our team skill set. And I remember just sitting around. We were in between a session. We would usually contract for an hour or so, but the civilian market can come in and use these as well. And I really wasn't familiar with that, but I would see it all the time. And I remember sitting around and just noticing, kind of my world had opened up outside of the training I was doing. And I said, man, there's a lot of people here right now. It's the middle of the week. It's not a school holiday. And there's a lot of people of every demographic, age, and capability, and they're having a blast, an absolute blast. They're always filled. It just dawned on me, like, this is really cool what they have going on here. I had been traveling between Austin, Florida, other parts of the country, using the same facilities, not cookie cutter, a little bit different every time, but been doing it enough years to know that these are pretty prevalent. And again, a really cool thing that seemed to be great for the community, and it is. So as I came back to Camp Lejeune, I was still living at Camp Lejeune at the time, and being a member of the Marine Special Operations Jump Program, again, not just jumping for pay, but just as understanding what the program requires, I wondered to myself, why don't we have one of these? We, the military in particular, because I'm thinking from a training perspective, had done great things for me personally.
Yeah.
And, it was just an introspective question. So I kind of just did enough basic research, and where's the closest one? And of course, there's one 2.5-3 hours up the road in Rayford, but not really accessible to Marine Special Operations Command, just because of the time, the distance, and the time away from home, amount of money it takes to get out there, and so on and so forth. So that's really where the journey began, and I quite easily I went on iFly's website because that's what I was most comfortable with and what I used the most, and a great brand, great company, and I just contacted them. This is who I am. This is my idea. Is the Wilmington market is that something that you guys are looking at? And
so you did all this research. Was this prior to telling these guys your idea and your vision? So you were kind of in the back doing this on your own, trying to figure things out, and then contacted iFly, started talking to them. At what point who'd you go to first, Dave or Jamie?
Jamie.
Okay.
So, and I'll kick it over to you, Jamie, but I did it. I had, I signed some basic non-disclosure agreements with iFly, and they kind of gave me a project overview of what it takes to open one of these up, and quite a high dollar initial capital amount, and one that quite frankly was blown back, and I'm active duty.
Yeah,
extremely intimidating.
Yeah.
I'm active duty. I tell the joke at the time, if it wasn't for autocorrect, I didn't know how many S's were in business, right? I didn't have an MBA, and but what I took out of it, and before I kick it over to Jamie, like, man, this sounds like an awesome challenge. Like, what I've done my military career, found a challenge. If I, did some initial risk mitigator calculations in my head, and for me personally, I've always never wanted to be like a what if guy, and this sounds like an awesome challenge. I know how to solve complex problems. Put smart people together, the smartest people you can find, and or if they don't know this, you don't know that person, at least somebody else can connect you with. But put them all in a room together, SMEs, subject matter experts, what we call them in the military. Let's put our heads together and let's see what we can do with it. So, Jamie, when I brought the project to you.
Yeah, it was probably right about 3 years ago. I think it might have been Thanksgiving. And we, our families all get together at Thanksgiving. And Patrick, kind of everything you just heard is kind of what he said to me at the time. He told me about his experience. He told me about how full they were, how busy they were, how important they were for training. And he said, I'm thinking about maybe opening one of these in Wilmington. And he said, I just wondered what you thought about that. And I said, Pat, I think it's brilliant. I think you should do that. And he said, great. How'd you like to be my partner? So, and actually made a lot of sense. I mean, I bring almost 40 years of business experience to it, including corporate leadership and some entrepreneurial experience and some business consulting experience. So having said that, I had no idea what kind of adventure this was going to be, and it's been an incredible ride, an incredible learning experience, and we're going to get this thing done. I mean, it's been the plans are falling into place beautifully.
Hey, y'all just signed your ground lease, right?
We just signed our ground lease.
Yeah.
We're negotiating with the construction firm, and the financing is all coming together. So it's super exciting. And what Pat and I realized is we both still have full-time jobs, and this is a lot of heavy lifting. And we got really lucky because Dave was at the point in his career when he was thinking about what to do next. And in fact, I'm an executive search consultant, a headhunter. And I was connecting Dave with a lot of corporate opportunities, and they were very interested in hiring him. But none of them were quite resonating. And Dave, I'll toss it to you. Tell what happened from there.
Yeah, sure. So, as you know, the transition process out of active duty kind of starts a lot earlier than you would expect it to, in that you do the resigning of your commission about 4 months out. But not a lot of people are looking to hire somebody 4 months out. They kind of want somebody that's going to be in the seat within 30 days to maybe 2 months at the most. So I was interviewing around. That was going very well. I had just finished my MBA program in December of this year, so I was doing the interview thing. That was going pretty well, but nothing had solidified. And Jamie and Pat here said, "Well, what do you think about this? We're starting this thing up, and we really need somebody to run it. And we'd like you to be that guy." So they brought me onto the team. Very fortunate enough to be working with my family here, and excited for this opportunity to do this with them.
I think it was when I was on my latest deployment. I just got back in June, but I think it was in the beginning portion of that when I had heard through Simone, my wife, that it's a done deal. You're getting ready to finish, and we were just texting back and forth on WhatsApp or whatever. I'm like, "Hey, you want a job? You want to run a skydiving facility?" And it wasn't until I think it was around.
I actually thought you were joking when you said
that.
Yeah,
it was.
I mean, probably most people would think that was a joke, right?
I half-heartedly was, and then Simone and my wife and I started to think about it, and we were talking everything that Jamie just said, and I was like, do you think, one, can we do it right financially, right, and responsibly? But two, this kind of seems like a good idea. Is everything me and Jamie have talked about, to build a family enterprise that's great for a community on something that we're passionate about, right? Jamie, again in the search world, I used to Jamie and I would always, we've known each other for now 16 years, right? 2005. Yeah. And as the years went on in working, coming up on 15 years now, but he would say, "Have you ever thought what you want to do afterwards?" And he'd always just give me 3 basic questions, because I didn't. I was still in the middle of deployments and team time and all that stuff. And he said, "Well, what are you passionate about? Where do you want to live? And what do you think you're worth?" And I would always kind of contemplate that. And I'm like, well, and I would just think about it, introspectively. And I came back, and at one point we were up having a beer. I said, "I like skydiving," and this was years before this. And he's like, "Well, you know what? There's probably a couple $100 million industry in skydiving. I don't know it, but okay. I mean, you like to skydive," and a number of other things came up. Where do we want to live? My wife and I, we've been at Camp Lejeune since 2012, and we love the area. We love, we're in the Topsail region down, closer to base, but we love we love the people, we love the community, we love our neighborhood. So we said we want to be in North Carolina, right, in the Carolinas at bare minimum, but self-worth, right? What do we bring outside of the military, experience-wise? I'm not an infantry Marine, but skills-wise, special operations skills. Previously, I was a logistics officer, but how does that compute to the civilian world? Now I'm going through and helping through the transitioning program, the Honor Foundation, and shout out to them. It's a great program that I know you're affiliated with. Some people know about it, and we can talk more about that. But very hard for transitioning veterans how do I tell somebody this is what I'm worth, right? The soft skills that we talk about, so leadership, decision making. And it's always something for me. Obviously we're going to a different path, and I'm not going out and doing some interviews, but I think they still all apply. And again, I go back to a very complex problem, from capital raise to employee hiring. How does this all come together and put smart people together, and we're going to get it done? And we're that close, and we have a clear pathway ahead to open up our facility.
That's awesome. And I like this conversation because we have a lot of members of the VBC that are business owners or professionals, and then we have members that are active duty that haven't yet figured it out.
Yeah.
And so they come to our meetings and they join our organization so they can interact with folks who've gone before them to kind of figure out what is out there on the outside other than just a job, right? And so your story is interesting because you're not yet out. Mm-hmm. You're a reservist. Mm-hmm. Are you staying in the reserves?
For now, I'm doing that for at least a year or two. But it's brand new. I'm actually going up this weekend to Raleigh for my second drill period, so it's still very new to be on that.
Yeah, I see your hair's not quite long enough.
Yeah.
For a long time.
I had to go this morning to make it look like I do this part time. So
yeah, and you come from the corporate world, so you have that background. So this is just such a unique situation that people can learn from, I think. Yeah. So I'm excited to get the story out there. Let's take a minute to talk about how do we end up connecting. Mm-hmm. So you're still on active duty.
Yep.
And a friend of mine that I used to serve with,
yep,
I believe is your operations chief.
Yep.
Correct? And
yep,
he's like, hey, man, there's this group. You should check it out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Shane Stewmiller, Master Sergeant Shane Stewmiller, he actually put me through my initial Marine Special Operations training as an instructor in one of the final phases of it. And I always respected Shane. He does to this day, carries himself with complete class, hardworking, and I forget how we got on the topic. Actually, it was in passing to a friend as I was walking outside of work. He said, "Oh, I heard you're trying. There's kind of rumors around that you're trying to open up an iFly." I said, "Yeah. Where I am." He's like, "You should talk to Shane." He's again my operations chief at the battalion, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing down in Wilmington? I heard you some sort of veteran organization." And he's like, "Yeah. Do you know Chase Roth?" At the time, I didn't remember that you were one of my instructors prior to you exiting the military. But he's like, you got to check this out. This thing is really, really expanding quick, but it's awesome. We all get together at least once a month. I think it's second Thursday, is it?
Yep.
Second Thursday of a month. We get together at the brewery. We select a different location every month, and we just talk between transitioning, new business ideas, and is there any chances you either work together or a referral to somebody else, and just a classic networking or activity, but amongst veterans and like-minded people.
Yeah.
So immediately.
Well, he's got the pitch down, so I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. Immediately, I was on LinkedIn, Chase Roth, what's going on? I was very excited. I had just started the Honor Foundation. And I guess conceptually, I've always known networking, right? Know a person who can refer you to somebody, but never, I guess, officially kind of went through and sat through the importance of networking, and certainly within the veteran community. We had just started networking down in Wilmington based off of referrals.
Well, I don't know what your experience was like, but mine in the military is you don't ask for help.
Exactly.
Your networking consists of telling those in your network to do things that you have that level of control over, or figuring it out on your own. Exactly. Or leveraging your support assets in whatever way they are designed to be leveraged. But there isn't a big emphasis placed on just building relationships with people that can support you, and you may not even know what capacity yet.
Yep.
So that was something that took me a while to figure out when I left active duty.
Yeah.
So you reached out to me on LinkedIn,
yep.
And I responded. We the three of us ended up getting together for lunch at Dockside, which I love Dockside.
It's great.
Great place to hang out and look at all the yachts and think about your future.
Yeah.
And then what happened from there? So we had a lunch, and then you had some needs, and we were able to connect you with some folks within the VBC. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, immediately. I'm just trying to remember. So John Panaccione, am I pronouncing his name right?
Panaccione.
There you go. Now I got it. John immediately said, "Hey, man, you're talking about a capital raise. I know great people, who are in the veteran community are going to help support, even just give you time if you want to, what we call an Honor Foundation, a cup of coffee, right? Whether on Zoom or not." I'd reached out to John, who we greatly respect. We actually just came from sitting with John to talk about iFly, and I think we'll work together. So John, Rob, Matt, here sitting in the Signal Fire studio. So just reaching out, and it was just simple messages. And, you introduced us. Within 15 minutes, you had fired off 3 text messages, which we're eternally grateful for. And it was just a conversation. Hey, these are these guys who they are. This is what they're looking to do. I think maybe you guys should have a conversation. And one thing I think through this whole thing, Jamie, when we first started, we said, we'll talk to anybody. I'm a huge believer in failing forward, not promoting failure, but at least have a conversation. If I go into a pitch, or if I'm going to try to raise money, and you just completely biff it, but at least you learn something, right? You learn something. It's not a failure unless you don't learn something and implement it. So again, back to it. You reached out to us real quick, and within 30 minutes of me driving home, but connecting with John, Matt, and several others that, hey, let's talk, let's come down, either have a beer in person or jump on a Zoom link and just start discussing business. And I think it was a week later, we had last month, we had our first VBC event, went down, introduced ourselves, and man, I just love the organization, what you guys put together here, and this thing is catching fire. It really is.
Well, thanks for saying so. And I only ask you to tell that story because that's exactly what everybody that's in the VBC is trying to do and what they want to see happen. Is they want to see guys like you trying to start new things and be a resource to help you succeed. Of course, there's referral business to be had out of all of it, but at the end of the day, it's a win for all of us if you guys come to us and we can give you tools that help you win. And that's the main goal. So it's just, I think it's important to acknowledge it when it happens, so we can continue doing it for other people.
A funny story to kind of illustrate like the power of this VBC network is, and also asking for help, learning things along the way that we didn't know, as we were about to sign our lease and having a conversation with the lawyer about it. Come to find out, we need general liability insurance for the property.
Perfect. That's a great
so
story.
Pat immediately fires off a message to you. We're connected. You connect us to Rob, and the day before, we're scrounging to find general liability insurance. Rob hooks it up for us, helps us find our path there, and that morning we get it sent to us. We go in there, and we execute the lease like same day.
That was within under 12 hours of when you sent that message to
Hell
Rob.
yeah.
That was. I was like, man, how did we miss this one?
Right.
Thing.
Exactly.
That won't be the first. That won't be the last one you miss.
Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
That's,
we
that's
got
how
a lot
the road is.
We got a lot of learning to do, but I think that's probably one of the most powerful ones of how fast and that the VBC itself in the concept and it can help us.
So, if you don't mind discussing some of the details, if we get into area that's under confidentiality agreements or something like that, just say so. But just to hear more about the process and everything, you talked earlier. You went on the iFly website. You fill out the contact form. They're like, "Yep, cool. It's going to cost you, what is it, $8 million?"
Yeah. So I think that the original number was $12.4 million to open.
$12.4 million to start your business.
To open the door.
And then your reaction to hearing $12.4 million was what?
We swearing in here or no?
You can, yeah.
I was like, fuck. Well, there goes that. Is really what it was. And I sat on it for, so that was probably like the summertime that I actually kind of got that out of iFly and their global development team. And I'll say, shout out to Pat Framel, who's the vice president of global development at iFly. We worked with the I conceptualized it, brought it to Jamie, and Jamie actually went to an iFly facility up in New York and kind of like validated, like, yeah, this has something to it. And then that's when we really officially said, hey, well, let's do this together. But okay, $12.4 million, here we go. And we really started to just break it down. And, iFly has been awesome to work with. And, it was everything we asked, like, hey, well, why is it this? Why is it that? And understanding the different parts of the business from helping with pro formas. I didn't know what a pro forma was. And it's financial projections. Okay. And we got a guide on that from iFly and started just breaking it down problem by problem. And really the pro forma, when I first saw it, I was like, overwhelming. Yeah. Three spreadsheets with a couple hundred lines of
that all feed each other.
Exactly. Calculating.
Yep.
I'm like, why
over a 10-year time frame.
Yep.
It's really something. Yeah.
And that was about probably a year to a year and a half of getting it to where we're like, okay, we're confident in the numbers we're putting down, and with some verbal validation from the iFly guys. Right? They can't legally say, hey, yes, those are your projections.
So I want to beat this up for a minute because. Yeah. There's so many veterans. Rob's really good at spitting the statistics out that want to that say they want to start a business when they leave the military and then don't for whatever reasons. And I think capital's a lot of it, right? And they get discouraged because they find out they need $50,000 or $100,000, much less $12.4 million, right? So your reaction to that was, holy shit! Like, where am I going to get $12.4 million? Not knowing what you didn't know, like you said earlier, not knowing what you didn't know. But you brought that to Jamie. Yep. Were you intimidated by $12.4 million?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, man. But it wasn't
there's a way
to say no.
Right.
I knew we'd get this figured out.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself has been a journey. I mean, it's one step at a time. You explore banks, you explore venture capitalists, you explore private equity. I mean, over the last, November, over the last 11 months, Patrick and I have been on a road show. And for, 6 of those months, he was deployed. Can we say where?
Iraq, yeah.
He was in
There's
Iraq.
enough people there, yeah.
So we're doing Zoom meetings with venture capitalists from Silicon Valley. And he's in a bunker in Iraq, and I'm in my place in Connecticut, and, we're going through all these things. And we just decided we're going to make this thing happen. And I have a belief in the power of the idea. I have belief in Patrick. I have a belief in Dave. Enough belief in myself, and you just start swinging the bat, and you have to acknowledge and understand that, that success requires an enormous amount of failure sometimes before you get there, and you just do it. You just plug away, and it's still a journey. The journey's not over, but the finish line's in sight, and so it's been super exciting.
So what would you say to a veteran who's looking at leaving, or maybe they're already out and they want to start a business and they're intimidated by that? The fact that they don't have a lot of money in savings. They barely scrape by while they were on active duty. They're not in a position to even be able to leverage themselves. They don't have a lot of assets that they can leverage. So what would you say to guys like that or gals that see that and they're like, man, I'm not gonna be able to do this. I don't have the money.
I start exactly what we're doing right now. Like, again, fine. If you don't know the smartest person, I like to say, and there's a quick caveat to it, like putting talented and passionate people together to solve complex problems. And people say, well, what if I'm not talented? Everybody's talented. You may be talented at networking or talking to people, introducing people to your friends, but one person becomes 3 more other people. Those 4 people become 7 people. But having conversations, it was very overwhelming. I was fortunate to have my father-in-law in a position in business that he's had 30, 40 years of experience. But there was a handful of number of other people. Luke Forcer, part of the VBC, served alongside him, great friend. Me and him discuss it, like, hey, validate the idea. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Yeah, it's a lot of money, but yeah, right? So validating the thought, but you have to have a conversation. You can't do it by yourself. You can't. If you were talented enough and an MBA puts you in that right spot, right mindset, maybe.
Well, I'd take it a step further and suggest that not only can you not do it by yourself, but you don't need to.
Right, exactly.
Right, I think that's, like we said earlier, that's something that we have a hard time with as veterans, is thinking that we got to just figure it out and we got to just do it. right? We got to either get over, through, or around the obstacle in whatever way we can. And a lot of times we're reminisce to just call somebody and say, hey, I need help. How would you do this?
Yep.
So you had the wherewithal to do that, and like you said, you were lucky enough to have somebody in your network. And then when you guys realized you need $12.4 million, you called Dave, right?
Yeah.
That's why they called you.
Some money banks.
Right.
But Dave and Bernadette, his wife, they've been part of this journey the whole time. Dave just came on officially in August, as a paid employee and COO of the company, and part owner now of the company. But they've been along through this journey through the whole time, right? And supportive.
So now you're partially funded,
Yep.
right? You're not completely to your goal yet,
Yep.
but you're funded enough to where you feel confident to sign ground leases and get the ball moving.
Yep.
You've brought on full-time, not just partners but paid partners
Yep.
as well. So I guess something I can extract from that is that you don't have to have a 100% solution to start.
No.
Right, you can just start, and then you can figure certain things out as you go. Is that a fair assessment of how you guys are approaching this?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a systematic way of hey, I need this money at this time, which we're going through right now, and we have pretty good milestones that we know of when that money's going to be due. Right, some of it you have to have the 70% or 20% solution at least to make a decision to get to the next point. And full disclosure, like Jamie's saying, the journey's not over, and we're going to continue to learn, and there'll be hiccups and stumble blocks. But I tell everybody they're speed bumps, they're not roadblocks. There's nothing ahead of us, or in starting this, we just went with the mentality like use them as a speed bump mentality. You can always go around a speed bump, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and you can get to yes, or it's just a small blip in the radar. And I feel like a lot of that sounds like hope, but it's not. It's just an understanding and a mindset. Again, put smart people together, and figure out that complex problem. So, like you said, start with conversations with people you know. Of course, have a common sense view. Is this a valid concept? In our case, from a business standpoint, it's a gap in the market, and I think it's a validated need, at least through conversations we've had, and certainly looking at there's the demographic portion of it, and we went down to iFly Austin. I had the opportunity of tagging on a jumping trip with Jamie's availability to come down to Austin to iFly headquarters, and they accepted us in there. We sat down with the global development team. This is probably a year into it or so, and validate in the end, iFly has to say yes because it's their brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But try to find common sense ways to validate your concept, and from the comment from just talking to people to and then once you're down that. It starts with conversation. You think it's a good idea? Yeah, it's a good idea. Okay, now looking into, hey, how do businesses grow? I Googled business plan, how to write a business plan, and just slowly, I found a 9-page document of categories. Okay, I just started typing. Yeah, just started typing, and Jamie and I went back and forth to where we got to a spot that we could at least show it to iFly, and for them to say yes. We're going to refine it a little bit as we go forward. Just it's a little dated, but the concept's there. Yeah.
There's an old saying, beginning is half done. And how often do you run into somebody who says, I should have done this, or I could have done that, or I had that idea, and the world is full of that. And,
right.
The truth is, if you have to have everything figured out, you'll never start.
Yeah, you'll never do anything.
You'll never do anything. It's because it just doesn't work that way. It's funny. Things don't change that much. And by the way, it applies to anybody who's transitioned out of the military. It's not even if you just want to be an entrepreneur. I mean, even just to get out and get a corporate job, it takes a certain amount of willing to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember when I got out, again, we're talking about back in the 80s, and like Dave said, you had to give 6 months notice, and my separation date was December 21st, or December 20th, and at Thanksgiving, I still didn't have a job, but I was way too, there was no going back at that
Right.
point. The Air Force wasn't taking me back.
Right.
And, you just have to get out there and work it, no matter what you're going to do. And, life has a funny way of having things line up. We've had so many twists and turns in this journey already that I never would have predicted.
Right.
You know, and yet, you know, somehow you go around the corner and there's the answer, and then the next question is not too far beyond that, but it's so much fun.
I think one caveat off of it is, and you told me this when we first met, and I guess, again, conceptually you kind of know it, but in the veteran community, but certainly outside of that, there are so many people willing to help and at least just have a conversation. Yeah. And that's not with no expectation of financial, paying them for it. Willing to have 30-minute conversation or an hour conversation because time goes by like that. And you're like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. SBA financing, great example.
Yeah.
How we came to, we're currently in the process and the end zone's near, in terms of financing. But, I heard of the SBA, the Small Business Association. I just had heard of it. Mm-hmm. Googled it. What's the limits? Do they do this? Do we even qualify?
When we first called them, they told us to forget about it.
Yeah, no chance.
We'd never fund a project like that.
Yeah,
One guy, an SBA official, told me, I've never seen an SBA loan larger than $500,000. So, I mean, we might be able to get you there, but you got a long way to go before you get this project funded. Yeah. And, if we would have just said, oh, I guess that's the end of the road, it turns out that person wasn't fully informed.
Yep.
Right. Their experience was their own.
Yeah,
It wasn't the experience of the rest of the SBA officials, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can find people, like there's been other people, whether it's banks or not, that you talk to, and you can tell, how the conversation's going. First 15 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. This is part of, it's not to mean being in the military, but well, these are all the challenges you have, so, thanks for, you have a good idea, but way too many challenges for this, and, probably wouldn't, this is all you're going to go through, climbing this mountain, and, thanks but no thanks. And, we get off those phone calls and we immediately jump back on another Zoom because, to kind of back brief, about what we talked about, and we don't want that person in our lives. So,
right.
Let's go find somebody.
We don't need that negative Nancy.
Exactly.
Let's find someone else to talk to.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Just not taking no for an answer, right? If you look hard enough, you'll find somebody. I had a meeting with a banker once. I do some land development stuff on the side, and I sat down with him to talk about some things, me and my partners, and he said, I'm not comfortable with the project you're talking about. He said, but if you talk to enough bankers, you'll find somebody that is. Mm-hmm. Point being, you're not going to get a yes from me, but there's somebody out there that will give you a yes. Yep. So go look somewhere else. You'll find them. And like you said about getting turned down and turning negatives into positives and that sort of thing, I walked away from that conversation not feeling discouraged because he said no. I was like, he's right. If I just ask enough people, eventually someone's going to say yes. Yeah. And we ended up getting funded, but not through a bank, but because we just kept talking to people. Yep. So that's a great point. Yeah, man. It's a great point. So what's it like being in charge of an organization that has a ground lease for some trees right now and no wind tunnel?
Yeah, so for one, it's been very eye-opening so far as everything where we have to take this thing over the next year to get it there. Right now, it's great to see a plot of land with nothing on it because I know what that. Well, I don't know, but I could imagine what that feeling is going to be like when we do open this thing up and we have this 60-foot tall thing standing behind us. So there's just going to be such a great sense of accomplishment to bring that to this area. So for me at this standpoint, it's just nothing but excitement looking forward because I know what's coming across the next year, how much we're going to learn, and we're going to have this structure in place, bringing such a great attraction to Wilmington.
Now, as a transitioning service member, are there any things in particular you're doing to help prepare yourself for your new role in this company that maybe the military didn't prepare you for? Are you, taking any courses or training or anything like that, or are you just kind of OJT in it, or is he taking you to night school?
Yeah, well, so there's been obviously a lot of learning that's been happening so far, but I think like we've kind of been hitting on is you've got to build a network. The network is where the strength is, and and really, like we always say, like when you leave the military, there's so much that you feel like your community you've kind of lost. Fortunately, I work with other veterans as well, so they understand that. But our first VBC event, I was like, when we were there, I was like, this is what I've been missing, this kind of feeling of community in the room. So that network in and of itself is for me what I don't think the military really taught me when transitioning, was that I have to get out there, meet people that are all doing the same thing, that have already carried that pack for a mile down the road, that know maybe the answer, or know a way to lighten the load, or know that I need to talk to this person or that person that may have a solution for us, or at least a way to get there. So for me, that has been the learning that's taken place since transitioning, is that you've got to get out there, find that community, because it exists out there. There's a lot of great people doing a lot of great things for each other. Become a part of that community, and then pass that along. Be that guy that, when the next guy is transitioning out, can you receive that phone call and say, hey, I've done this. This is what didn't work. This is what did work. Or you should talk to this guy because he knows what's going on.
Very cool. So I've been fortunate enough to have my wife support all my crazy ideas that I've had since I've left active duty. I don't know why she continues to, because plenty of them have completely crashed and burned and failed and cost us stress and money and everything else, right? But she does. And I've learned through that process that personally, there are things that are way more scary than being shot at. Yeah. Unlike financial ruin is one of them that's, to me, way more scary than being shot at. So my question to you guys, you still on active duty, you just leaving, how are your wives feeling about your new adventure?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. My wife has seen this. She was, and I guess we'll get her to listen to this, but she was the driving factor. I wanted to put one in Sneads Ferry right outside the gate, because I was only thinking of the iFly. Put it right outside the gate. First, I was wondering, why doesn't the U.S. government have one? Mm-hmm. And then, as we've broken down how expensive they are to run them, to operate them, so on and so forth, it makes sense why there's not one on any U.S. base in the world. Because the private sector has them, right? And it's a big market. But I was like, why don't we have one at Sneads Ferry? We get tourists coming in all the time, and we hadn't deep dived into any of the demographics and how many people within a 60-mile radius you want with this thing, and that is a driving factor for success and revenue and so on and so forth. And she's like, why don't you put in Wilmington? And me, I'm like, Wilmington that's like 35 minutes. I don't want to drive that far.
35 minutes is so far.
Yeah,
right?
I come from the Northeast. If you're driving 15 minutes, you're like, oh my God. But I was like, you're actually pretty smart. And she's like, you should put it in Mayfair. I'm like, Mayfair? Yeah. I don't know how you go. This is early in the journey. I'm like, I don't know. Who owns Mayfair? Who do I talk to? I don't know.
Right.
And lo and behold, the plot of land there right on Eastwood is the corner lot that is the rear entrance into Mayfair, right along Eastwood Road going to the beach. So, she has been a supporter the entire time. Absolutely. If deployments have come and gone and so forth. There's, quite frankly, right, I have my daytime job, and which is as we all know, is 12 hours a day type thing, and that's not to include your BlackBerry that you have at home to answer emails, emergencies
they
pop up.
They still give out BlackBerries?
They actually just transitioned. I just now got a Samsung.
Do they go antiquing to find these
things?
Yeah.
I was
Where
wondering.
do they get those from?
Nothing against BlackBerry, but if it wasn't for the U.S. government, I don't know how they would stay in business.
Exist. Yeah. They wouldn't. Yeah.
But now we just switched to Samsung. So
okay.
Yeah, this is actually like 2 months ago. But she has been, is this thing going to take off? Is this thing going to take off? And it's certainly been a learning journey, not, of course, in business, but with her, right? I'm keeping all these things. I got these things going 1,000 miles an hour inside of me. I got planners here, my notes, my OneNote. But not keeping Simone informed, right? That's not communicating with your wife or your spouse, not usually a good idea. And learning how to, I learned about pro forma. And she said, what is pro forma? Well, this is why I need it. This is why I'm building this business plan. This is why we got to go to Austin to sit with these guys. Well, did they approve it in Austin? Well, yeah, they approved the concept. Okay, when are you going to open it? Well, okay.
when I get $12.4 million.
Yeah. And that again, that's the biggest learning point before I stop, because I keep going, is the communication. Of course, I felt this in the military, but I guess I probably should have learned that lesson. It doesn't just stop in the military. Communicating on where we are, kind of just giving status updates.
Well,
right?
It's different now because you can share a level of detail about your business with your wife that you wouldn't have shared about your military job.
100%.
With
It's a
your
great
wife.
point. Yeah.
So you're used to just broad brush. Hey, I'm going on a deployment.
Yep.
I used to not even tell my wife about deployments until like a few days beforehand.
Yep.
Like, hey, by the way, I'm going to be gone for the next 9 months.
Yep.
What? Like, that's why I didn't tell you 2 months ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I didn't want it to ruin our last couple of months together, the stress and anticipation
100%.
and all that. So you get used to just kind of hiding them from it, to reduce the stress.
Yep.
But now you're doing a thing where if you don't share, it creates the stress.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to kind of flip that.
Yeah, and learn today about it. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? You're going down the path of looking at corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understand you're employed now with as a partner in your new company, but it's still not really there yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have revenue. You're a long ways from being cash positive in this thing. How's that affecting things at home, if at all?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, risk is a part of life, obviously. But when opportunity comes along, you answer that door. Bernadette and I kind of live by a phrase of, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. When I was considering, staying in or getting out, excuse me, Bernadette knew that, I wasn't too enthusiastic about going back to being a supply officer for another tour. So then it kind of became like, well, that doesn't sound like a hell yeah to me. So when I was, kind of thinking like, does this sound like something, does staying in sound appealing to me? The Marine Corps military in general has a phrase of grow where you're planted, which basically means like you're going to do what we tell you to do or get out, essentially. So so I was kind of like, well, I'm not enthusiastic about, staying in to do the job that I'm assigned to do. I want to find something that I am excited about. And I kind of went back to, and everybody in this room has done it, is when you join, you slide tags, right? And you pick the things that are most important to you as far as like why would the Marine Corps, the military in general, be important to you? And for me, that was, challenge, leadership, and adventure. And what we're doing now satisfies all of those because this is a challenge, it's leadership, and it's adventure.
Yeah.
So that's how this, absolutely became a hell yeah for me, and being able to work with my family as well. So.
And the missus is on board with that.
She is, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
That's pretty cool. It's awesome to have that support. Tough to do without it.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, well,
You're not exactly looking for a career transition at this point, are you?
No.
like these guys are.
Yeah.
So
you're right. I'm not. I've actually had a great career, in corporate and then in leadership consulting, and I really was. This is a wonderful reinvention, frankly. Yes, I'm still working in my consulting, my corporate role now, and I will for another couple of years. But we're forming a business enterprise. This iFly is step number one, and it's going to be an incredible asset to the city of Wilmington. It's going to be a wonderful resource for the U.S. Marine Corps. It's going to be an amazing source of recreation for the local people here. But it's probably the first in a larger enterprise, and what's fun about that is you get to be in business with a lot of different people. You get to make new friends. Mm-hmm. You get to broaden your network.
And you get to go on Signal Fire podcast.
You get to go on Signal Fire podcast, and I just want to throw in a little. Or a large recognition from my wife Kathy, who has supported me in a lot of moves in the military, a lot of moves in my corporate life. She's hugely supportive of this. She and I together are major investors in this enterprise, and she's hugely supportive of that. So it is. It does take a village. I just do need to say one thing, and I want to have a special call out here for Dave, because there's this old saying that when you have bacon and eggs, the chicken's involved, but the pig is really committed. And I think Patrick and I are the chickens here, but Dave is fully committed. So thank you for that, Dave. Yeah.
That's a big stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time here together for this show. I had a couple asks for you guys coming into it, so let's go around the table and get to those. So first, I asked you if you could leave us with a couple of things for our listeners, bearing in mind who our audience is, and that they might benefit from learning a couple of things from y'all. So whoever wants to go first, one to three things that you want to leave with everybody.
I touched on one of them, but threw in there. But again, I will say, always ask for help. There's nothing wrong with it. You have to, and it's not swallowing ego or just being humble. It's like you said. People are willing to help. A bit cliche, considering this is an iFly, an indoor wind tunnel, but I actually had kind of thought about this. I'm a big kind of quote guy, and I always kind of have been in my career. And I thought about this a couple of years ago. But kind of the difference between a lot of people is, some people jump, some people don't, right? In jump school, perfect example, right? Some people just nope, not doing it, right? Not stepping off the ramp. But for me, introspectively, it's like, and it applies to skydiving. You got to step off the ramp. It's risky. It's in case of skydiving, it's risking your life. But trusting yourself, trusting that you know how to solve a complex problem, trusting that you know your body is going to throw your parachute, and you got to just step off the ramp. And it's risky, and there's a lot of anxiety that goes into it. But again, and the final part of that is when it's risky and you don't know what to do, and there's a complex life problem, whether it's your financials, whether you're building a business, find somebody to talk to, find those talented, passionate people to solve that complex problem. So that's
awesome.
So I would say, just allow yourself to pursue opportunity. Don't become stagnant. There's a lot of organizations out there that will provide a very easy way to transition, but easy is not always the right answer. Comfort should be uncomfortable, and you should continue to push yourself towards a challenge, to learn something new, to try something different, and just go for your dreams. Yeah.
Awesome.
What I would say is, don't underestimate how valuable and special you are. Coming from a military background, with the training you have, with the discipline you have, with the contributions you've made to our nation, those are hugely valued by the civilian world, and yet the civilian world doesn't completely know how to comprehend everything you can do and what you're capable of. So know that you're going to run into that, and have confidence that that you have enormous, whatever you decide to do, that you have a lot to contribute, a lot to add, and that you're valuable. That what you have, the world wants and the world needs. That's what I would say to our vets.
Thank you for that, Jamie. Appreciate that. Now, on to the book list.
Yeah.
What do we got?
Book. I have a lot.
We got show and tell here.
Yeah, outside of.
You actually brought the books.
Yeah.
Most people just remember the titles.
We thought you wanted us to read them.
Yeah. Andy Kaufman.
Next episode.
Yeah. Outside of all the, I got my bookshelf, or virtual bookshelf at this point, filled with all types of war stories and all that stuff. But for this one, actually, I read I want to say 2 years ago, and it's called Profit First by Mike Mikalowicz. And profit first, not so much you would think in business, right? It's all about profits, right? And that would naturally incline that it's not about people. Now it is. And I actually recommend this a lot to fellow vets, guys active duty, because what it did for me, although yes, the structure, the shell of it says profits and how do you maximize your profits, but actually how to manage your finances. It applies to businesses, applies to me personally. And a very systematic way, and just, hey man, call your bank account. You can have multiple bank accounts open, right? To organize. You want to save money for a vacation. You want to save money for a business adventure. You want to save money for this, right? And just how to, in a systematic way, help you to kind of manage the stress of finances in a very simple way, and something that works. I use it to this day. How to ensure you have enough money for your utilities and not just leave it in one account, and then eventually come to utility time, you're like, oh, here we go, right? And it's a great book. So again, Profit First, very informative, very easy to read, and even the audiobook is great to follow as well.
Awesome.
All right. And with me here, I got The Three Only Things by Robert Moss. So basically, this is about tapping into the power of dreams, coincidence, and imagination. Using these, powers or forces in your life. For one, recognizing them, giving them power, not dismissing them. and kind of using those to search out upcoming opportunities or paths that you should take. So again, kind of just paying attention to the signs that are coming to you and utilizing those to shape your future.
Very cool.
And I'd like to recommend two, if you
Absolutely.
would let me.
Very
The first one is called The Big Leap, written by Gay Hendricks. And The Big Leap is, I think, I wish I would have found this book 20 years sooner in my life, maybe 30 years sooner. It's about identifying and being able to eliminate and conquer the self-limiting mechanisms that we all have. If for people, it'll help open your horizons. It'll help you see a bigger vision and be able to attain it. So I'm really a big advocate of that book. The other one is, and I just want to point out, there are a lot of folks out there probably who don't want to be an entrepreneur, right? They're happy on as part of an organization. They're happy to have a regular paycheck and a benefits plan and all this. They want more of a corporate type of career. And again, as we talked about before, making that transition isn't always the easiest thing in the world. So I have a book I'd like to recommend for them, and that is called The Career Playbook. It's written by a guy named Jim Citron. Jim Citron is a partner of mine at Spencer Stewart, which is the firm that I'm partner in. And he runs our CEO practice. So he spends day in and day out dealing with the titans of the world. He's an incredibly smart and impressive and influential person. He decided to write a book for people in their early 20s, and it's kind of spanning from early 20s to kind of early 30s. People who are trying to get a career started, people who are trying to build, having it at a point of transition in their careers. And it's about how to do that, how to think about it, how to network. Networking is a big part of that. How to find the right mentors. And mentors are incredibly important. We haven't talked about that today, but they're a big deal. And so the Career Playbook is a step-by-step explanation of how to find exactly the right job that you want and be successful and grow a career. So for people who want to do that, the Career Playbook.
Awesome. All those recommendations sound great. My book list grows every month instead of shrinks, no matter how many books I read. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic, guys. I really appreciate you all coming in, sharing your story with us and our listeners. I think it's beneficial for everybody out there to kind of hear how you look at something with a sticker shock at $12.4 million and decide you're going to do it anyway, knowing what your own bank account is, and that you've got the ability to put the right people on the team, the perseverance to get through those obstacles and hear the no's and the negatives and keep going anyways. And we can't wait for iFly to be in Wilmington.
Come on, fly.
Is there a way for folks to get in touch with you guys before iFly is open if they want to get involved in some way, or maybe they want to ask you about your process or something like that?
Yeah, for me, my wife's the Facebook gal in the family, but I'm big on LinkedIn. So again, shout out to the Honor Foundation to help out with that. But LinkedIn, I'm on there, just Patrick McGuire, Maguire, and please hit me a message, and I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you and discuss.
Awesome.
Yeah, same big on LinkedIn. So Dave Soler, Soler. Certainly more media coming soon. We're in the process of working on that for the team here, so that'll be coming soon as well.
Yep. And I'm George Jameson, also on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chase.